Hello, everyone. Welcome to this freeform episode of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. I'm Kelly, and today we are going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into some of the kind of wild and woo-woo and weird meditation practices out there. And I don't even necessarily like using the term like weird to like stigmatize them. But what I will say is after 5.5 years of not really dabbling in the woo-woo that much on this podcast, I was like, you know what? It is time to just have some fun. Let's talk about some of the more out there meditation techniques that people ask me about. This might come up like on a retreat and someone might be like, oh, have you ever tried using meditation to talk to spirit guides and aliens? And I'm like, oh, well, as a matter of fact, let's talk about that. That kind of stuff. Or like if we just decide to do a little impromptu womb clearing via meditation, we're going to talk about that. Cord cutting, let's talk about that. Using meditation to awaken your psychic abilities. Let's do it. I thought, you know what? It's just, I don't know what it is about like the energy right now. It seems like collectively we are feeling like a little tired, a little worn down, maybe a little burnt out. And maybe I'm personally feeling that way because I am at the point of pregnancy in which I no longer walk, but I waddle. And I'm feeling a little bit worn out, but I just like every time I talk to someone, I'm like, oh, how are you doing? And, everyone just seems like they're feeling just a little bit burnt out. And so I thought, let's just have some fun. And I want to, before we dive into this, I want to do my little like caveat, my little like asterisks here. This is not, if this is the first episode that you are listening to of Mindful in Minutes, this is not the usual topics that we talk about. I have been doing the show for 5.5 years, and I have never once, I don't think ever mentioned a womb clearing. So I really do, for the most part, I really like Mindful in Minutes being a place where like, we might dip our toe in every once in a while, a little bit of the woo-woo, but really just getting down to like the nitty-gritty, creating guided meditations where you can just like hit play and meditate. And I just like creating these practices and these kind of, little mini learnings around different topics that are very kind of like tactile and just help you kind of access a deeper part of yourself without going, too out there. I always love a good out there, just like personally. I'm just such like a curious person. If like the first time I heard about like cord cuttings, I'm like, what is that? I need to know everything. I'm so curious. And it's something that just some of these practices or topics along the way. Also, I apologize if I sound like I just like ran. If I just like went for a run and sat down to record this podcast. I definitely did not just go for a run. However, we are at the point where there's not a lot of real estate in my abdomen right now. And I feel like little baby Poppy is squishing those lungs. I can't get a full breath. So I apologize. I'll try to sit a little taller. If it sounds like I just like ran and then sat down to record this. That is not what's happening. But I thought it'd be fun to just dabble in a little woo-woo, a little out there. If you know that this type of stuff is not for you, do not worry about it. I will see you. Well, maybe I won't see you on Sunday because the companion meditation, I let you guys vote on Instagram, and I've been having a good time kind of watching the battle in the votes. But as of right now, I'm checking live update. So it looks like cord cutting meditation is currently in the lead. So I'm thinking that's going to be our companion. It'll either be that or a psychic awakening meditation. But I thought, you know what? It's been 5.5 years. Let's do something a little different. Let's have a little fun. Let's get a little out there. But if this is not for you, then just I'll see you later. No problem. Then don't worry about it. If you know listening to this is either going to stress you out or you're going to feel uncomfortable with it or it's just not your vibe, that is so not a problem. I'll see you later. There's 375 other ones that are have nothing to do with cord cuttings and spirit guides and womb clearings and all of that. And I still love you just as much. So don't worry about that. If you are someone that's just like a little bit curious, let's have some fun. Let's do it. Let's talk about some fun out there things. One quick announcement before we get into our first of, I have 6. I wrote myself a little note of 6 different kind of out there woo-woo meditation practices that I think I get asked about the most. So I thought that'd be a good place. This is definitely not a comprehensive list. Maybe in another 5.5 years, we'll do a part 2 and throw a few more in there. But one quick announcement, there is that at-home retreat coming up this weekend on Sunday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. However, anyone who signs up gets a replay. It's a summer tranquility retreat. We won't be doing any of this stuff there. It'll be my last live at-home retreat before maternity leave. So yeah, I'd love to have you there. I'll put the information in the show notes. It's pay what you can. It is, if you're coming live, it's a 3-hour, just like a mini retreat. But anyone who signs up will get access to a replay. So I'd love to see you there. But yeah, should we dive in? Should we have some fun? Should we do it? So the plan of the day is going through, like I said, I have these 6 topics. We're just going to go through one by one. And I'm going to talk about just kind of what it is, the very kind of Spark Notes version of like, what is this practice? How is meditation used to do this? What is that like? And then any personal experiences that I have had with these practices, because I have done all of them. And I will give some instruction, like if you wanted to, give it a whirl, I'll give you a little bit of, how you potentially could do that. So on the list for today, we have cord cutting, womb clearing, awakening psychic abilities, past life recollection and healing, ecstatic dance, and talking to your spirit guides. And then I put in parentheses, aliens ? Because I don't know, I get asked about aliens a lot, which, you guys are gonna get to know, I guess, a different side of me. But usually on like a week-long retreat by like day like 5 or 6, and we've been hanging out for like almost a whole week straight. Maybe we're just like hanging out by the pool. Someone might be like, hey, Kelly, I heard of someone who tries to talk to aliens via meditation. Like, what do you know about that? And every once in a while I get a question like that and I love it. And I'm like, let's open that can of worms. Let's go there. Let's talk about it. Not always. And it's never official retreat topic at all. But sometimes it comes up, or I'll have a friend and they'll send me like a reel or a TikTok that is someone talking about one of these practices, and they'll be like, have you heard about this? And so I thought, let's do it. Let's have fun. All right. Let's just go in order, shall we? We'll start with cord cutting and we'll bring it home with aliens. If you would have told me 5.5 years ago that I'd be doing an episode like this, I'd be like, wow, this podcast has really evolved. It's really changed over the last 5 years. But nope, it really hasn't. It just took me this long to be like, let's do it. Let's have some fun. So we're going to start with cord cutting. So a cord cutting meditation, and you can go to cord cutting ceremonies. There's people who do like particular ceremonies around cord cutting. All of the things we'll be talking about, I'm just going to be talking about them through like the meditation lens, like how you could do it through meditation. Cord cutting is this idea where basically we can have these energetic ties to things, from the past or present or future, or people or limiting beliefs. The way I think about energetic cords or cord cutting is kind of a way of letting go and releasing. So if let's say that you have someone maybe that you've been holding on to a lot of resentment or hurt or past, and it's like you just can't like shake that person, even if they aren't in your life, right? You're like, this person does not have any physical, real life, real world ties to me whatsoever, but you can feel there's still kind of this like energetic connection, right? Where you're just like, oh, I really just want to like let them go. They're part of my past. Like, I don't want to think about them anymore. So that pull that you're feeling, that kind of like attachment, if you will, in the meditation space, we often refer to this, or I don't even know if I should say the meditation space, in like the spiritual space, we consider this like a cord or an energetic cord. And you can have energetic cords or ties to all sorts of things. I think we're most commonly are aware of or feel the energetic ties that we have to people, just because it can be so emotionally charged, the relationships that we have with people, the experiences that we have with them, the memories that we have with them. And we can really kind of hold on to things and just hold on to these attachments. So if you feel like even though someone or something isn't necessarily a part of your everyday life, but there's still kind of that like tie there, that attachment that you're ready to let go of, you may use a type of meditation or do an exercise that's called a cord cutting, in which you're doing a meditation where you're kind of visualizing yourself energetically cutting that cord or severing that tie that you have to that person. Or like I said, it could be a past experience. It could be really anything, a limiting belief. It could be truly anything. I know it's not necessarily helpful to say anything, but if you think about just in the grand scheme of things, we haven't talked about past lives or spirit guides or things like that, but there's also, an idea that maybe you have an energetic tie to a past life that you've had, if you believe in that. But it's really anything that it's just, you can feel that you're still kind of holding on to something. And the only way that you can really let go is to, quote, sever that energetic connection with that person, place, experience, thing. And you do that through cord cutting. This on a scale of like 1 to like talking to aliens, which will be the 10. I would give cord cutting on the woo-woo scale, like, it's not maybe a 4 or 5. It's really not. It's not like too out there per se. I think that we've all had the experience of at least feeling like there's something or someone that we just can't like shake. And we're like, I really just want to let that go. Like I want to be released from it. And this is just a way of kind of severing some of those deeper ties that we can have to things. So to do a cord cutting meditation, which I highly suspect, I don't know, at least it's in the lead right now for companion meditation, but I'm going to give it a full 24 hours for the poll. So maybe you'll get a guided one. But how I like to do cord cutting meditations is you start by just, taking a few deep breaths, quieting the mind, settling yourself, kind of getting in that meditative state. Maybe you like to do that by listening to a guided meditation first, then doing a cord cutting. But what you're going to do is once you're kind of in that meditative state, is you're first going to take inventory and be like, okay, what is the cord, right? We're going to name it. And you would only it's very possible that you have multiples. I think many people, most of us have multiple cords, and they're not always a bad thing, right? A cord isn't necessarily a bad thing. I have an energetic cord to Pork Chop, right? Because, he is my child and we have, this connection. And you can have energetic ties and cords to things that are good and positive. It's just, usually when we're doing cord cutting, it's because we want to release something that we feel like is no longer serving us or is kind of draining. And so, you want to kind of sever that tie. So you're going to name the cord that you want to cut or the tie that you want to sever. Then you're going to think about, where is this thing in my body? Like, where is this cord connected to me? It could be anywhere. It could be your heart. It could be your abdomen. It could be your big toe. It could be anywhere. And what I will say about all of these practices that we're going to be chatting about today, don't second guess them, because here's the thing. You can't go and, go to your doctor and be like, oh my gosh, I'm just really struggling to get over my, toxic ex-best friend. Like, can you give me an x-ray and see where the energetic tie is so that I can imagine myself cutting it? We don't know, right? So you have to kind of just trust your gut, and you can let it be fun in a way, or just let it not be that serious. And so if your intuition says that you have an energetic tie to your toxic ex-best friend to your big toe, just go with it. It's like, don't second guess it. Just go with it. So you're going to take inventory, decide where is the cord connected to you? And then you're just going to visualize it. I like to think about, what is the energy of this cord? Often, if it's something that you feel like it needs to be severed, the energy will be like that person or that thing or that memory or that place is pulling energy out of you. It'll feel like an energy suck, where maybe like a healthier energetic cord, like when I think about having a cord between me and pork chop, that kind of feels like an even energetic exchange in a way, right? There might be times where, I'm giving him more energetically, or maybe vice versa, right? But it feels kind of healthy and reciprocal. Where often when we're doing like a cord cutting, it's something where it feels really draining, or it feels like stagnant, and it feels kind of like a heavy, like an anchor. So you're going to think about, what is this cord like? What does it look like? Does it look like rope? Does it look like chains? Does it look like steel? Does it look like a string of light? And again, there's no wrong answer. You're just going to trust your gut, and you're not going to second guess it. So again, where's the cord? What is the energy? What is the vibe of this cord? What does it look like? And then you're going to decide, how do I want to cut the cord? We're going to use our intuition. Some common ways to sever these ties is seeing like a big pair of like golden scissors that just go, kind of like those big like ribbon cutting scissors at like business openings. And you're going to go and you're just going to cut the cord. It could be a light that's coming down and kind of like shining down like a laser and like burning through it. Maybe it's a knife. Maybe it's something else. It can be anything. Again, we're going to trust our gut, and whatever tool we need to cut the cord, we will do that. We will cut the cord. We will then watch the cord kind of fall, and we'll heal up wherever that cord was attached to us. So that could be visualizing, any little bit that's still left to, connected to you kind of falls off, and that area is healed. It's probably the most common one, right? Just healing up that area so that it's fully like there's no tie, no connection to that thing. And then that's it. That's how you do, in essence, so it's like cord cutting 101. But that's one that I get asked about a lot. You'll also hear people talking about cord cutting ceremonies. And, there are some practices and some practitioners that do cord cutting. They may help you with that. There's different rituals that you can do. But just from a meditation standpoint, it's really just like naming the cord. Where is it attached to me? What's the vibe of it? What does it look like? Doing the cord cutting, trusting your intuition as to however you're supposed to sever that tie, and then healing yourself wherever that cord was connected. And then that's it. And sometimes cords can come back, especially if it's a really tricky person or thing or memory. But often it just feels really good to think about, like, where am I still holding on to that thing? And then visualize like a complete like release, let go, like detachment from that connection that is running to that thing that we have this cord to. So that's cord cutting, which, I really is. And this is something too, I may not necessarily call it cord cutting, but I think we've done like a release or letting go meditation where you kind of use this general concept of like being attached to things and kind of cutting that attachment, right? It's just kind of the energetic version of that, of being able to kind of cut that cord. This is kind of a bad transition. A different kind of cord cutting, transitioning to womb clearings. No, we're not going to talk about umbilical cords, but I do want to talk about womb clearings. I get asked about this one a lot, or sometimes this comes up if I'm doing a workshop or I'm speaking about the chakras and specifically talking about the sacral chakra. So giving this one on a scale of like 1 to 10 woo-woo, I would say like a womb clearing is maybe like a 7 or a 7.5. And I'll explain why. I don't think it should be, but I think it's like a little bit more out there. So in essence, a womb clearing is when you do a meditation and this works for anyone who has a womb space. And you're basically going to do 4 steps. You'll get to a meditative space. Usually someone will journey you to your womb space. And I will say I do have a recording of a womb clearing meditation. So I will link to it. It's actually a Meditation Mama bonus, like a freebie. But I have a 3 meditation pack freebie that is a womb clearing meditation, a soul baby meditation, and a fertility meditation. So I'll put that link in the show notes. I'll try my best to remember. So if you want to try one of these, I do have a recording of it and you can listen to that. We are not even going to get into soul babies today. That might be like, I don't know, the woo-woo and weird part 2. So womb clearing, you're going to journey to your womb space. And the reason that I gave this a higher out there woo-woo scale rating is because I think we're really generally disconnected from this space, right? This idea of like the feminine divine. We just from a very young age, I think we are kind of trained that like, or conditioned that this space, that the womb space is like, oh, like don't talk about it. Or it's like, you know, dark or gross or something to be like ashamed of in a way. And I think that it leads us to then become disconnected from this space, from this part of us, right? And again, the womb space is for anyone who, you know, however you identify, if you anatomically have a womb, that is where your sacral chakra or your second chakra, which has to do with like your passion and your creativity and your ability for like intimacy and like creation in general. That could be, you know, creation of life through carrying a baby, sure, but that also could be like creation of new ideas, like creativity, things like that, all come from that space. And it tends to really get shut down, particularly in, you know, people who identify as women. Not that all people who identify as women necessarily have a womb space and vice versa. But what I will say is that anatomically speaking, if you do have a womb, this is also where your sacral chakra is believed to reside. And so if we are shutting down that womb space energetically, it tends to then kind of cause a shutdown or a stagnation energetically there as well. So womb clearing is about first going in a meditative state and just reconnecting with that space. You know, you can talk to it if you want. You can visualize it. You can just journey there, right? It's like just reconnecting with this part of you that maybe you're feeling disconnected from for quite a while. You connect with it. Then the next step is you're going to take inventory. So what does this space look like, both energetically, physically, what's happening? Something that comes up, and we did do an optional womb clearing journey at the Portugal retreat. And again, if you're someone you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to go on a retreat now if it's just like aliens and like womb clearings. No, retreats are like 2% this and then like 98% like not this. But if people are curious and we have time like in a retreat and we're talking about, you know, this was a sacral chakra workshop specifically around like connecting with your passion and like your creativity. If it comes up and then people are like, oh, that's really interesting. Would you ever do like a womb clearing journey? I'm like, oh yeah, we've got time after dinner. Like anyone who wants to do a journey with me, like, you know, come meet me down in the yoga space and we'll do one. So it's usually kind of like impromptu like that. If people are asking about it, I'm like, well, if you want to check it out, like, you know, I'll lead one after dinner or whatever. So we're visualizing. So quick recap, lots to say about womb clearings. We're reconnecting with that space. We're visualizing, taking inventory of what's happening in that space, physically, energetically, also emotionally, because this is a place that can have a lot of emotion associated with it. I will say that if you're thinking of doing a womb clearing and you personally are working through any trauma that is directly associated with this part of you, just make sure that you feel good and safe about going there. And if it seems like maybe it's not for you right now, please honor that. Like, please honor that. Because of course, if you're journeying to your womb space and that's an area for you that is triggering or could bring something up for you that you just don't feel like uncovering or going there, Just don't. So little, warning there. Then after you take an inventory of what's happening there, then you're going to do the clearing. So what this often looks like is clearing out any old energy, any stagnant energy. It could be, clearing out truly, like a really common thing that comes up when people are taking inventory of their womb space is like, it almost kind of looks like an abandoned house in a way. Like maybe it's a little dusty. I don't know. Maybe there's some cobwebs. Who am I to tell you what's in your womb space? But it could be anything. So maybe you're, clearing all of that out. Then after you've done the clearing, then you're going to do the healing. So that could be then visualizing, bringing health and vitality and whatever you feel like needs to be healed and restored physically, emotionally, energetically to this space. You'll then do that healing and just kind of reconnecting with specifically that womb space. So that is womb clearing in a nutshell and how you do it. And again, I'll link to it in the show notes. If you want to try one, I have a recording of it. So circling back real quick to soul babies, the reason, or I guess the first time I was ever introduced to womb clearing was when I decided that I was ready to try to have a family. And so, I have a lot of really cool friends that do really interesting things. And years before that, I had been introduced to this idea of like a womb clearing followed by a soul baby meditation, which is where you do the clearing basically to really, almost like if you're getting your house ready for like a house guest. This is like the baby version of it, where you do a womb clearing, you heal, you reconnect. And then the last step of that, which is not in the recording that I have for you, but it would be in the soul baby meditation, is then if you choose, after you've prepared this space, you then could welcome in the soul of your future baby into that space. So it's like preparing your house for a guest, opening the door and being like, come on in, I'm ready for you. So that's when I first really learned about it. But it's something that I have found to be really useful, like beyond that too, of just reconnecting with a space that, like, again, I just never felt that connected to. There's just a lot of like stories and noise and junk that's around like that space that it can lead us to feel really disconnected. So I do find this to be a really powerful practice, albeit it's a little bit out there. Like, would I go to like one of my husband's work functions and like we're all like talking about what we did that day? Would I be like, oh, I led a group of 25 women on a womb clearing journey? Probably not. I wouldn't like open with that, but that's not to say that I don't think it's a really useful and powerful practice. It absolutely can be. So that is womb clearing. Okay, using meditation to awaken your psychic abilities. Let's talk about that one. So on the woo-woo scale, I'm going to give this one maybe like an 8. I think just because, there's a lot of people that like the term psychic or medium, or the whole concept of that can be like a little bit polarizing. I know there's people that are like all in on the idea. There's some people that are like absolutely not. That is baloney. There's some people that fall in the middle. So where I personally fall on the spectrum, not that you asked me, but I'm going to tell you, is I fall somewhere in the middle. So I do absolutely believe that there are people that have the ability to see the unseen or to communicate with things beyond, what's in our quote real world. I think I mentioned this like maybe once. I've had my own kind of like experiences with different little ghosties, or kind of getting these like downloads of things. We're not necessarily here to, talk about things that I've experienced that I can't explain. But I do definitely believe in the idea. I think of like psychic abilities as something that we all have the potential to do, if, like a skill, like if we work at it and we work on cultivating that skill, kind of like we could all learn how to play the piano, but for some of us, it would come a little bit faster and easier than others. I kind of think about like psychic abilities as that same way. Like if we all really put our minds to it, and worked on kind of cultivating that skill, whether it was just like really deepening our intuition or, whatever, I do kind of think of it as like we all have the ability to do it. We could cultivate that, but for some people, we can't all be the Beethovens of the psychic world, but there will be some that are, incredibly gifted when it comes to that. And then I do also think, like, if we're talking about like psychics in general, I think there are some people, I've had some experiences with people that I truly believe are psychic, and it all has to do with like really personal stuff. So, but I won't necessarily share those stories here. But, and then I think there's people that's just like, that are full of baloney too. But that is truly like any industry or field, right? Anything you can, there's always a spectrum of people that fall within a category of jobs or gifts or professions. I don't think that, psychics are exempt from that. I think there's some really gifted, talented people out there, and I think there's some people that are just totally full of it. But if we're looking at meditation and awakening psychic abilities, so this is something that they've always been really closely tied. Always, always, always. This idea of like psychic abilities and meditation are closely tied for a few different reasons. One, for many, if they want to kind of turn on, it, and again, this is very much like psychic, like 101. I think of it as like, if you're trying to, can kind of be like a light switch, right? So not for everyone, but if you're working on kind of building this skill, if you wanted to kind of turn the light on or open up the door to that kind of communication, for many people, the way that they would then get to a place where they could open up the door to that kind of communication is by getting into a deeper meditative state. So it often takes a similar process for many to kind of quiet the mind, quiet the body, withdraw the senses, so they can kind of tap into this other part. So they're very closely tied because I don't know anyone who I believe has psychic gifts or has had experiences that doesn't meditate. And again, I think it's because it's like meditation is just a vehicle, and then you can decide where you want to go in that vehicle, from anywhere from, I want to meditate 10 minutes a day because my cardiologist said it'd be good for my blood pressure, to I want to meditate 10 minutes a day with a focus on awakening my psychic abilities. Like, meditation is just the vehicle. You decide where you drive the car. So I think it's really important for people who are awakening these abilities, cultivating these abilities, have these abilities, want to access them. Meditation seems to be like a cornerstone of this practice, no matter what stage you're at. So if you specifically are wanting to awaken psychic abilities, there are some common meditation practices that you can do. The first one is going to be working on deeply cultivating your intuition. So there is a connection between your intuition and psychic abilities. There's these different, clairs. Like, people are usually familiar with like clairaudience, clairvoyance, things like that. It's like basically just different ways that you can receive this type of information. But for many, the way that you can start receiving information is by getting to a meditative state. And it often can feel like a deep intuitive knowing is how it can begin. So when you're working with meditation to awaken your psychic abilities, what that might look like would be quieting the mind, really kind of getting to that deep state. And then just opening yourself up to listening, if you will. Just opening up and asking, is there anyone here that wants to say anything? Or is there anything that I need to know? Is there anyone that, needs to connect? And if I am describing this to you and you're like, Kelly, that sounds scary. That sounds like the beginning of a horror movie. I'm not going to tell you what to believe or what to do. But what I will say is, if something doesn't sit right with you and you're like, ooh, that does not sound pleasant to me, then just don't do it. Then don't worry about it. Then you know what? Go back to, cut some cords, clear some wombs. Maybe, aliens are going to be more up your alley. I don't know. This can be, and for me personally, I first started having experiences like this when I was really young, and it felt really scary to me because I really didn't understand. And so I get that, and I hold space for that. So if just kind of getting to a meditative state and being like, is anyone home? Does anyone want to talk to me? If that doesn't feel good, don't do that. What you can do though is work on just a deepening of your intuition. So that will often look like maybe focusing on the space between the eyebrows, so that third eye, again, going back to the chakras, but the third eye chakra is where your intuition resides. And even meditating on that space and thinking about building your connection between you and your intuition can be such a great place to begin if you're maybe one day wanting to take it further, if you choose. Also focusing on the crown chakra, so the one that is hovering just above your head. You can imagine that is kind of a like a doorway or like a sunroof, I guess, into your being, where you could then take in some information that way. But overall, I would say the biggest piece of using meditation to awaken your psychic abilities is one, cultivating a really strong meditation practice in general, focusing on the third eye and the crown. Then if you feel like it, you could use that to ask questions or see if there's anything that comes through, and that can truly be anything. That can be anything, guidance for the day. Maybe we think with psychic abilities, right? We think then some ghost is going to show up and I'm going to have this scary horror movie experience. That's not it. That's not it. And that's definitely not what I'm describing here. If you want to go, I'm sure there's plenty of podcasts that if you want to have that experience, they will teach you how to do that. And that is not what I'm talking about here. Even when we talk about the woo-woo, we're talking about the fun and the light woo-woo. So, it could be just seeing maybe if one of maybe we should roll into spirit guides next, but you could use this to then talk to your spirit guides. Is there any guidance that I need? Anything like that. So that's really kind of the tie between meditation and awakening your psychic abilities. Kind of like when we did the energy healing meditation to kind of activate that flow of universal energy. It's kind of more of an activation meditation with a focus on the two areas, the third eye and the crown of the head, where we tend to receive information from the universe or the ether. I'm going to go out of order here because since I mentioned spirit guides, let's go there. Let's go to the spirit guides. So if you are wanting to really dive deep, I'm going to, I'm changing up my own order here. We're going to go spirit guides. Then we're going to talk about some past life stuff. And then we can end with some ecstatic dance, because that one's just fun. If you are a spirit guide or past life person and you really want to dive deep into it, I highly recommend you check out Gina Sear. She has a podcast, Past Lives and the Divine. She and I did the retreat together in British Columbia. I know her personally and professionally, and I think she is the best. She would be the person, she is the person that I would go for guidance in this, for learning in this, for past life regression sessions, which is a little bit different than what we're going to talk about. She's the one that I would go to. I highly recommend. I'll link her in the show notes as well, but it's Gina Sear, Seer, Past Lives and the Divine. If what I'm about to talk about, you're oh my gosh, that's so interesting, I need to know more, you can learn more and then some with her. However, I have done quite a bit of dabbling in both, just personally dabbling in both spirit guides and past lives. So you can come to me for the 101, but then when you're ready to go to 201 all the way up to your PhD in this stuff, Gina's the one that you want to see. So starting with spirit guides, because it is kind of closely tied in a way to the psychic ability meditations, is there's this idea generally that we could have spirit guides, or sometimes it's called a spirit team that's around us. So this can be made up of anything, anyone. It could be loved ones that have passed. It could be, just beings from the universe, guardian angels, aliens. I told you they were gonna show up. Um, eh, Really, your spirit team, your spirit guides, there's just a general idea. The concept of it is that you have kind of on the spiritual realm. Oh, and I'll give this one a woo-woo rating, I think. A woo-woo rating. I think we're going to go about an 8 with this one. The aliens will bump it up to a 9 maybe. So it's basically this idea of like you can have this team. You can have these beings that can guide you, that are there for your greatest and highest good always. They're always there for your greatest and highest good. And that when we get little nudges from like the universe or, we are protected in some ways, or it just seems like something's intervening or we get a message or something like that, that could potentially be a message or help or assistance or guidance from your spirit guides or your spirit team. So think about it as like teachers or leaders, but just not on the physical realm, kind of more on like a spiritual realm. So the way that you would access kind of your spirit guides or your spirit team or potentially talk to them, ask them for guidance, to thank them for any help, would be, again, to kind of get to that meditative state, taking a few deep breaths, relaxing the body. And you often receive information from them the same way you would like psychic information, so maybe through the third eye or the crown of the head. And so you can maybe think about opening those areas, but then you can just sort of like going back to cord cutting, you can visualize like what, how many spirit guides do I have? What are they like? Do they have any names? What are their personalities like? And I know it sounds silly, and I'll say that even if all I provide for you in this next, hour or so is just like a good giggle where you're like, oh my gosh, is Kelly like on drugs? I am not on drugs. Definitely not while I'm pregnant, but in general, that's not, that is not my vibe. My vibe is more like spirit guides and womb clearings and less like drugs. Just, between us, that's kind of more my thing. So even if I just provide you like a good chuckle for the next like hour, I am so happy with that. Laughing is so good for your soul. But it sounds silly to be like, how can I connect with something that's not there? But that's where sort of this, gray area of the woo-woo, the out there, like, again, you can't just like call up your spirit guide and like ask them. It's not like they have like a, Bumble profile where they're answering these questions for you. So the only way that you can really get to know them or to connect with them is through kind of this meditative space and not really second guessing it, but just being like, okay, spirit guides, like, it's nice to meet you. What are you like? What are your names? What should I call you? And so getting to a meditative space, kind of opening up maybe the crown of the head or the third eye, even a little bit of the heart center, because spirit guides are always there for your greatest and highest good. They're never bad or scary or dark. They're not. Whatever you believe in. I was raised in kind of more of a Christian community, so I sometimes think of them akin to like maybe a guardian angel or like that, kind of an idea. You can, just be like, oh, just connecting to them, and you can talk to them. You can ask for guidance. You can ask for help. You can ask for like healing. So I personally do some spirit guide work when I'm wanting guidance, but I do it a lot when I feel like I need emotional and spiritual support. So that might be like asking for their help with a particular thing. So the more that I've worked with my spirit guide team, one of them is that I know exists that I can call on is a grandparent that has passed. And so sometimes when I need help with like parenting, and I wonder if I've told this story on the podcast before. I think I've actually talked about this. So, but I'll share it again, like kind of quickly, since we're talking about the woo, let's talk about it. So when Pork Chop was little, I developed this really kind of severe postpartum anxiety, specifically around his sleeping. And I wouldn't let myself sleep. And I apologize if I told this story before. I know I've told it like personally, but I don't know if I've ever shared it on the podcast. So I basically didn't sleep, which I would not recommend. It is not good for you. It is not healthy. It was absolutely not good for my physical, mental, or emotional health whatsoever. But I developed this really deep anxiety and fear that if I slept while he was sleeping, something bad was going to happen to him and I was going to sleep through it. And then I would just be crippled by this grief of, the worst thing happening to my child. So I really developed this fear around it, and I just didn't sleep, or I slept truly with one eye open, and it was destroying me. I understand after that, why they use sleep deprivation as a torture tactic. It was not good. It was not healthy. It was not safe. Thankfully, it was somewhat short-lived. But the thing that sort of moved me in a different direction was I was standing there, and it's really, this experience for me is so profound, and hormones, I'm really pregnant, but it's hard for me to tell this story without feeling emotional, because it just felt like such, it really just felt like help, this intervention from something, when you're just at a low point, and you're oh my gosh, please, I just need help, anyone, are you listening? And I just was really struggling, and I was standing there over pork chops, little, bassinet, and he was sleeping, and I was just looking at him, and I was so tired, and I just felt like I had to stand there and just watch him sleep just in case something happened. He needed me. I could be right there. And I was doing that, and I felt this presence that came in, and it was this warmth of when you're in a room and someone has walked in, and sometimes you can just feel someone's energy will just feel familiar to you, and this felt very warm and very loving. And it was I just could feel this warm, loving kind of motherly or grandmotherly kind of energy, and I felt it come in and kind of stand by me, and and I never felt scared or anything like that. It felt very warm and loving. And I just, in my head, it was almost, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was very much this, kind of felt a hug from a mom or a grandma. And I just remember in my head kind of hearing, but I didn't hear. I don't even know how to describe it. So I apologize if this isn't making any sense. Let me tell you, you had to be there. Hopefully you will never be there experiencing I don't even know. But, and she just said, it's okay, honey. I'll take the night shift. I'll stand right here. I'll keep an eye on him. I won't let anything bad happen. I'll let you know if he needs you. You get some rest, and then you can take the day shift. And even saying that out loud, I know that sounds out there and whatever. But to me, that really felt that embodies this idea of spirit guides. So now I know that if I specifically need emotional, mental support, in motherhood specifically, that I can call on this grandparent, this guide, to help me with that. It's the more that you get to know these specific team members in a way, the more that when to call on them for different things. And I just think it's really cool, because it's and even if it's totally bunk, and maybe I was just experiencing I don't even know, sleep deprivation psychosis or something. I don't know. If that's what it was very comforting, and it helped. And in that moment, I moved past that crippling anxiety that I had. So whatever it was, it worked. And I just felt so much comfort of her being I will literally stand right here, as technically pork chops great grandma, I will stand here, and I will let you know if you need anything. You go get some sleep, you take care of yourself tonight, and then we'll switch in the morning. And it just felt so loving, so comforting. And although I've never experienced anything as intense as that postpartum anxiety that I felt in those first few weeks after having pork chop, I really just, now I know, if I need mom specific support, that I can call on that one particular guide, if that makes sense. So I tell you all of that because I very much believe that the more that I do think that we get help and support and love from things that we can't see. Now, I think what that is completely up to your interpretation, but I do think that exists. But now I know that anytime, the more you get to know these people on kind of your spirit team or your spirit guides, the more you get to know them, the, I don't know, the more you know, like kind of what their specialty is or like what their wheelhouse is and how they can best support you. So the way that you access that through meditation is similar to the psychic awakening. We kind of just get to that quiet place and you're just like, oh, like, are any of my spirit guides here? Or, I'd love to get to know you. It's very kind of like, for me, when I do this work, it's very conversational where it's like, hey, anyone like want to talk or like anyone want to like catch up? Like what's going on? And so every once in a while when people are, and if you're very curious about the alien thing too, like go talk to Gina because she knows much more about this. She and I talk about this sometimes just like when we're catching up, because what's the point of having fun woo-woo friends that are like past life regression specialists if you can't every once in a while be like, has anyone's spirit guide ever been an alien? Sometimes people, I've never had this experience, so I can't personally speak to this, but I have heard from other people that like when they're talking to their spirit team and they're like, oh, like, what are you? That sometimes it feels like it's like not necessarily like a worldly being. Now, again, that is completely up to your interpretation. I would also put like a guardian angel as not like a worldly being, right? And so it's up for interpretation, but sometimes it does come up. But I promised you guys like alien content. But that's really all I've got for the alien content. I like one time met a friend and we like met for coffee and she was like, my algorithm must have known that I was meeting with you because I got served this weird like TikTok about how to talk to aliens through meditation. And like, I have never tried that. So I really can't give you any guidance on it. Is it a thing that people do? Yeah. Is it a thing that, if you look for, you could probably find? Absolutely. I just don't have any experience in that. My comfort zone and wheelhouse is kind of more like, things like let's let go of energetic heaviness through cord cutting. Let's clear our womb space and welcome in soul babies and, get emotional support from, great grandma. That's kind of more my vibe. But if you're curious about it, like go there, go for it. So then that leads me to past life recollection and healing. Now, the experience that I have with that, the first time I was familiar with the concept of past lives, it is something that I think is really interesting. And I have done, quite a few past life like regression sessions. As I said, I work with Gina. And it's something that like I don't even know if I have fully wrapped my head around it. So we'll give this like I think we're going to give this like a 9. I don't even necessarily know what like a woo-woo 10 would be. I haven't, met it yet. I haven't met my threshold of like, oh, that's a 10 out of 10. But I think we'll put this on like a 9 because it is definitely out there, but it's also like this really complex concept. Like I find it to be something that, I'm really intrigued by, but I also like this concept of like other lives and, different timelines and all sorts of things that it's like, I'm absolutely open to it. And I've had some really interesting experiences working with past life stuff. But my little caveat here, this is just what I personally sometimes think about is, could working with past lives, spirit guides, womb clearings, core cutting, all that, could it be total just baloney and BS? Absolutely. I am 100% open to any of this just like not even being the thing. However, do I think that a lot of these things, even if they aren't necessarily quote like real, can be beneficial and like therapeutic and like healing in some ways? Yeah. Like I do think that there can be benefit. It's almost kind of like, when they talk about placebo effect, like placebo effect has the term effect in it. And so even if someone is experiencing the placebo effect, just in general, like they feel better, they're feeling better. And so when I think about some of this kind of woo-woo stuff, like it's fun. I think it can be kind of light. Also, it could be total baloney. And also it could be baloney and it could give you food for thought. It could maybe provide you some support or healing that kind of you're looking for. And that's where I think I fall on the spectrum of like more buying into past lives than not, than it being, baloney that I find to be beneficial. And I don't feel bad. This is the kind of stuff that I truly like say this to Gina's face too, because this is like, her life's work. But it's so interesting to me. So past lives, kind of 101 specifically through meditation. It's basically this idea, and Gina does it through hypnosis, which like is similar but a little bit different. But it's this idea that like our souls are infinite, but our bodies, right, like our human suits, you've heard me use that term before, I think, like the bodies that we're given for this life, like those are finite, but then our souls are infinite. And so our souls may go to, different bodies at different times, and you can decide based on what you believe, like how that would happen, what that process would look like, whatever. But that our bodies, because they're finite, really only have memory from things that have happened like in this life. But our souls, because they're infinite, they will hold on to memories throughout their whole life, which would hold different lives and different bodies and memories and experiences and things like that. And through meditation or hypnosis or different vehicles, you can access some of those memories, right? You can kind of dive deep and uncover some of those memories. So my experience with past life work in general is that it's always interesting. It is never boring, let me tell you that. And it always gives you something to think about. And when I did my first session, and again, this was via hypnosis, like it was a very long, like it was like a 2-hour thing. It was much more involved than like, I'll talk about meditation in a second. But it was just really interesting because I was recalling a past life in which someone that had really hurt me, like really hurt, like kind of an abusive person in this current lifetime. Immediately when I met them, in this life, when I knew that it was not good. And I talked about this, I think, several years ago when I was talking about, this was an instance of kind of like workplace abuse that I was experiencing. But I knew the minute that I met this person, I knew like danger, warning signs, not good. And I ignored all the red flags, and I, decided to work at this place. And I knew it was not a good idea from the get-go. That's on me. But it was interesting because this was years after I'd worked with this person. And of course, something like that, like there's a lot of damage and healing that you hold on to. At least from my experience, I was doing that, holding on to it. So I was doing this like past life session in which I kind of got some context where this person had been, I'd interacted with them before in a different life, and they also kind of like betrayed me and hurt me in that life too. And so that's why I got that immediate like, no, warning, danger feeling in this life. And so I kind of did almost like a cord cutting or an energetic clearing. It just gave me more clarity as to why I had such a strong visceral reaction like to this individual immediately. And of course you can say, that maybe it was just my gut, or, if you've read the book, like The Gift of Fear, things like that, that maybe I just kind of knew like, this isn't a good idea. But it was just a really interesting experience to see like an interaction with kind of this person in like a different time and a different place. And it helped me to come to some resolution and healing around that particular person. Now, again, could it have been baloney? Absolutely. Did I find it to be helpful in terms of resolving the internal conflict and pain that I was still holding on to because of my time with that person in this life? Absolutely. So I think both things can exist at the same time. So if you're using meditation to kind of access past life stuff, what you would do is, again, you're going to meditate, you're going to get to that meditative state. And I find that sometimes I like to start with just a check-in. How am I feeling? What is my heart experiencing? What am I thinking? And any time that I come up against something, or I'm struggling with something often emotional, a fear, a worry, a pain, something, I'll just kind of ask, like, is this from this life, or is this something I've been holding on to for longer? And I'll just wait and see what comes up. And it might be like, oh no, this is like, this is recent, but it might also seem like it's something deeper. Maybe you'll get an answer of like, this is deeper. And then you can kind of inquire a little bit and say, have I been holding on to this for other lives? And maybe you'll get a yes answer. And then you can decide what you do with that. I often use meditation for past life work specifically if I feel like something needs to be cleared or I have some kind of a block that it's like, why can't I move past this? And it might be because it runs like really, really, really deep. And sometimes I'll explore that through meditation. So that is how I've never recalled like a full like past life or a scenario or a visualization or anything like that. Via meditation, it's always been by doing kind of like a more cut and dry like past life regression session, which is slightly different. But I have found meditation to be helpful if I felt like I had something that was running really deep and maybe even something that I was holding on to, like, and I didn't know where it came from, is kind of doing some release and some healing around it. And maybe just being open to the idea that it could have been something that I brought in from a past life or something that I want to, change or heal for this life. So that's that. But again, check out Gina's work if you are like really curious about past lives. And something I appreciate about Gina is she's very down to earth and very like fun. And I find the way that she shares this stuff to be approachable, especially like I said, like it's something that it's just kind of like you start talking about it and you're like, what is even happening right now? It just can be tough to wrap your head around because you're like, like past lives and, healings and this and that. Like, I think she does a good job of kind of breaking it down so it feels like digestible and like, fun. Learning is fun. All right, we are going to take it home because I've been chatting for over an hour here. Well, I'm telling you, we could probably do a part 2, but we'll see. We'll see if anyone gets too sassy about me breaking away from like the foundational meditation work and like studies and science and the brain and things like that to talk about these types of things. But we're going to end it with ecstatic dance. So I don't know why I have such a hard time saying ecstatic, but it's like static electricity, ecstatic dance. So if you're going to Google it later, that's how you'd Google it. This one, I'm only going to give it like a 4. I'm going to give it a 4 on the woo-woo scale. I really don't think it's necessarily like that out there. It's fun. The part that feels out there is it makes you feel a little bit vulnerable. So basically what you do is this is a kind of form of like moving meditation where you turn on music, and usually like you can even find like ecstatic dance playlists on like Spotify. It's usually like instrumental music. It's not necessarily going to be like, whatever your current favorite album is. It's not going to be like, your favorite Taylor Swift album. I mean, I guess it could be, but it usually doesn't have like necessarily like lyrics. It's like more instrumental. It can be like a little bit like hypnotic in a way. But you'll play music like that and you're just going to like move your body. So a lot of times people like to do this at night under a full moon to make it even more fun. So, sometimes it's like you're going out there and just dancing and like howling at the moon. I don't know. But the idea of this practice is that it's a form of moving meditation in which you're going to turn on music. It can be anything, but traditional like ecstatic dance music will be more kind of just like rhythmic and like hypnotic. And you're just going to start moving your body in any way that you like, anything. You're just going to try to just let it all go. You're just going to move your body. You're going to like dance and just let that kind of expression move through you just through dancing without judgment. And people will do this in like big groups. Like they'll do like a big kind of like, ecstatic dance like group. And it's really cool. I've only done it in a group setting. And so although I don't think it's necessarily like the concept, I don't think is like that out there of like kind of just like moving your body and like just, kind of releasing whatever you need to release through like movement and dance and music. Like that's not necessarily like too out there, but it does feel a little interesting at first, especially if you're in a group setting and you're like, oh, we're just listening to this music. And like sometimes people will like, I don't know, like yell or like howl or, I mean, it can, it definitely could go from a 4 and it can only go up from the 4 rating that I'm giving it. But the practice itself, I don't think is necessarily that out there, but it is kind of a cool experience because there's such a, like the times that I've done it in a group was like at first, it's like, oh, we're all just kind of like listening to this music and like moving however we want. Like it's, maybe I'm just like shy and bashful, but it's definitely something where I'm like, oh, like this is a little bit different. But then there's kind of this energetic shift of just like, I don't know, like everyone's just like having a good time in their own little bubble, like moving their bodies, doing their thing. And you don't have to do it in a group. You could do this like at home in your bedroom or in your kitchen or whatever. But it does, I would think it feels for me a little bit more uncomfy and a little bit more out there when I do it in a group. But it's basically just this practice of like letting your body move and letting dance be this kind of meditative experience, this moving meditation, if you will. So that is ecstatic dance. You might even be able to find like a little like dance circle or something that does this like once a month. There's some really like famous popular ones like in Bali, if anyone is there going there. They do that, but you can just find like a playlist on Spotify and just start playing the music, and like you can even do just for a few minutes and like just move your body and see what it's like. I find it to be really interesting. Kind of gets the creativity moving. But yeah, that's that one. So that's it. That's all I have. That's on my little list here of different practices that either I've experienced or that I get asked about, what it is, how you do it, kind of what it's like. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Hopefully I gave you, at least a little chuckle, maybe something to think about, maybe some ideas over the last hour as we've either been walking together or doing laundry or driving or whatever. This is not like the direction that this podcast is going in for forever, but I was like, it's been, after 5 years, like, let's have a little fun. Let's do a little like woo woo. Cause I know that people are curious about this. Like even when I post on Instagram stories, like, hey, this is what the freeform episode is. What topic do you want a companion meditation to? Like I had so many interactions with people just being like, oh my gosh, like, have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? Like, I know we're curious about this. So I thought it'd just be fun to kind of put it out there. And I, always appreciate you guys being so kind and open and respectful, letting me share some of these like personal experiences. I'm just so grateful for you guys. And I think that's all I have to say. Maybe I'll see you on Sunday for the virtual retreat. If not, I'll see you on Sunday for the companion meditation for this, which, as normal. And I appreciate you. And I hope that you are having a wonderful and beautiful day.